Payal Nagpal has talked about the structure of the story, the way it begins, the way it goes into the introduction of characters, and the most important character, so far as Professor Payal Nagpal is concerned, is the mill in the story. And the story is called The Miller, but she says that the story could also be called The Mill. Apart from this, I believe that the way the story has been presented by our speaker, it seems to be more of an essay than a story, because there doesn't seem to be a plot line or a narrative, and if it's there, it might be hidden behind the characters. How do you respond to this?
So actually, if one reads these stories, it's almost as if Zola is presenting a situation to us and asking us to analyze how characters behave under certain situations. So, for example, one of the things is that Dominic is, if he, in the story, he's described that, it's described that if he had dealings with the wolves of the ruins of Gagny, the old woman would not have been surprised. I mean, he's considered to be like this lazy, good for nothing sort of person. And on the other hand, Père Merlier himself is shown to be somebody who toils for pleasure, who enjoys work. But this, now whether this love transforms him or whether he was always a man like this, we don't know that. But in his relationship with Dominic, in his relationship with François, Dominic is shown to be very dedicated, committed, and he is also very hardworking. And he is considered to be a foreigner, but when the Prussians attack the mill and François gets grazed by a bullet, he immediately picks up the gun and he starts firing. And he participates in the war in a sense, to defend the mill, to defend François. So a very, very stereotypical trope of, the man trying to defend the woman here. But there seems to be something that, Zola is trying to suggest. But this is where, again, I'd like to bring in the difference between realism and naturalism. If we go back to any of the stories by Balzac or, his novels, for instance, there's a much deeper analysis. Here, there is an objective, a detailed objective description. And you're very right when you say that, it seems as if there is no plot. And at times, when one reads the story, one also wonders that it seems as if there is a situation that is painted for us in great detail, and we're asked to analyze how the character behaves in that particular situation.
So, which means that the story is presenting a point, and that point is to be considered apart from the writer and the characters in the story, also by the reader, and that the reader is invited to get into the problem of history, the problem of society that existed in the latter half of the 19th century France. So, would that be the way to
Yes,
approach
but
it?
in a very limited sort of manner. I think in that sense, again, I feel a writer like Balzac or Flaubert for that matter, they invite the reader to, they not only provide a historical overview of the society that they are presenting, but also ask the reader to kind of, think about what is really speaking happening in France at that point of time. Here, it is done in a, what should I say, in a more objective manner. I mean, I don't want to use the word superficial, but it is the outer reality in that sense. Delving deep into it is something that we are prevented from doing.
Which means that the story is confined to, is limited to the camera-like angle. That there is a camera that is showing what is happening in front of us, but what is happening behind the scene, that is visible,
So,
not visible.
absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is what is famously said of naturalism, that, it is reality as is perceived through the lens of a camera. So, this is, its strength, and it's also its shortcoming in that sense.
And can you say something about the characters? Because when we read the story, then the character forms itself in our mind. So, are they human characters, or are they just mechanically presented by the author?
They are human characters, and these are characters. One thing I would like to point out, that these are characters that have the potential for change. And this is where I think he tries to examine that turning point So, for example, Dominic Penkwa, who's considered to be lazy, a poacher, and so on. So when this match is fixed, it says that all Rorusas, they clamored, and they wondered, why this match was taking place. But he proves himself, and he proves to be much better than a lot of other people. So his being a foreigner, his being projected as that lazy person, maybe he was just a content person. Now here, the story does not provide us that point of view. Was he actually very lazy and he changed in his love for Francois? Or the other question is, was he just simply a person who was content and who did not have lofty aspirations that maybe others had?
What is your answer to the question that we have raised?
Uh, I would like to leave it at that. I would say that I think he was perceived as lazy, but was not really lazy. So I think it's not that he changes under this particular situation. It's just that he emerges as a character. I think Zola brings him out through this relationship.
And what impact does the lady leave on the man, Dominic?
So both these characters, actually, the Prussians attack the mill.
Mhm.
And it is during this attack that both of them emerge as very strong characters who are absolutely devoted to each other,
Mhm.
and to carry the story forward. So they are very, very kind of upset about this attack, and the Prussians are there. So Dominic is a foreigner, says Pemerlier, and he is not going to go to war. And if the Prussians come here, he will be on hand to defend his wife. And this is exactly what happens. The French say that, well, your mill is a real fortress. So at every point, the mill is brought back into the picture. So the
Mhm.
mill is the real, protagonist here. We can hold it without difficulty until evening. So anyhow, the Prussians attack, and the attack becomes very, very severe. The French are not able to hold up, and finally they take over, and they're very surprised. They're very surprised at the fact that here is a foreigner who decides to attack them. So what they do is they strike a transaction with Dominic that if he carries them through the forest and shows them all the routes, then they will kind of let him stay alive. Otherwise, he is to be shot the next morning. So this man, who's considered to be a foreigner, is equally dedicated to France, and so he doesn't want to do this, but there seems to be no option. And so now that, it's initially decided that he will be shot in 2 hours, and they when it's finally decided that they have till morning, now in the night, it is Francois who actually climbs. She's shown to be very petite, but under these circumstances, she comes out of her window and she actually climbs up and enters Dominic's room and tells him to run away from there. And he, of course, initially refuses, but she says that this is the only option and he should leave, and which he does. However, the Prussians are not going to let go. So they say that, well, now this man has, and he also kills a Prussian soldier. So they say that now that this man has killed one of our own, and he has disappeared, so the father is going to be shot. Now here is the conundrum. Francois doesn't know what to do. On the one hand is the father, on the other hand is the betrothed. So who does she stand for? So she doesn't know what to really speaking do. So what she actually does is she's confused, and she actually runs to the jungle trying to trace Dominic's steps. And when she actually comes across Dominic, she doesn't have the heart to say to him that he must come back so that the father can be saved. And she retreats and goes back. Uh, Dominic, on the other hand, is informed by somebody else that this is the situation, that in his place the father, Pemelier, is going to be shot. So in this kind of a situation, uh, the one doesn't know what is really speaking going to happen. And it is here that Dominic comes back. And Dominic is shown to be in a very, very good light, with a lot of integrity, lot of honor. Francois doesn't know what to do, and she does not want Dominic to be killed. She does not want her father to be killed. But when Dominic comes back, it is at the same time that the French army also comes back to save them. But they decide that no, nothing doing. One man has to be shot, and they shoot at Dominic, and he collapses. But the French take over and they shout victory, victory. And it's interesting, and it almost, it would be make for a very good Bollywood flick today, where suddenly, Payal notices that this man is still alive. And so he's taken to a nearby village and he's alive, and the two finally get married. So here is, really speaking, the plot, if you're looking for one. But the issue, I think, here is of an objective description where the mill is important, and at the same time, the other characters. And here I'd like to ask Professor Prakash what he thinks about this.
There's a kind of human interest, there's a kind of relationship, that has intensity of emotion in it, and then the man and the woman would finally come out of the tensions that they face in life, and that is what the writer is showing, showing the process of change that is happening in the story. That's I think, the way to interpret the story. I can yet raise a question. Isn't this story political in nature, in the sense that it has a take on nationalism? Two countries fighting, and the people are caught, in that web and all those things. Would you like to comment?
Yes, certainly. In fact, right at the beginning, as I said that mentioned that little bit about the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, precisely because of this. And this story, even though it explicitly does not make a reference to that, it takes that as the war as a point to uphold the integrity of the French, and how even a foreigner supports them and not the Prussians. So yes, it is a lot about, the whole idea of victory, victory is about French nationalism. Certainly that's there. And Zola is a French writer, so this is important. But it's also important that, he does give a lot of courage to the women characters here. So at one point, it's not only that Francois helps Dominic to escape, but when it is discovered that Dominic is not to be found, she says, and the father is going to be killed in his place. She tells the Prussians, "In pity, monsieur, do no harm to my father. Kill me in his stead. I aided Dominic to fly. I alone am guilty." Listen, she said, it would perhaps be, and even when she meets Dominic, she does not ask him to come back. On the contrary, she tells him, "It would perhaps be wise for you to remain where you are. No one is searching for you. You have nothing to fear." So I think in both these instances, the kind of integrity that he endows the women characters with. I mean, somebody like Francois is shown to be very, very demure and very extremely delicate and so on. But she's climbing windows and she's aiding her betrothed to kind of run away, and is standing up for what she has done by admitting to the Prussians that she's the one who has helped him run away.
So, which means that Zola, in the other sense, is talking about the clashes of nations, and on one side, and the individuals who want to come together, whether they belong to Prussia or to France, and that they have a kind of emotional link, and that finally they succeed in getting as close to each other as possible. So the idea came from your use of the word Bollywood flick. And it is that, that girl and the boy from different countries fall in love with each other, and then, their loyalties are divided, their countries are fighting through them, but then finally they come out victorious, and the country goes into the second place. So there is a kind of socialist attack on the national interests, because national interests go against the individuals and their emotions. And if I have heard correctly, Zola was a socialist
Yes.
In the French context, and that he would not give much importance to Prussia or to France, but to these two individuals and to the mill.
Yes.
The place, which is the place of work. So that's what Zola is saying, as you suggest. So would you corroborate it further?
Yes, in fact, I think the mill really stands out, and I really wonder that, is it also to do with industrialization that, he's probably saying that the mill is going to stand where it is. So this is certainly there, and uh, the whole idea of French nationalism is certainly there, I think, in Zola. But as you rightly pointed out, that he's a socialist, and he's also seeing how love, in a sense, conquers all. There is humanity, and the mill stands for that humanity, stands for that integrity, and a sense of honor, which is honor of being a human being. I think that is what he manages to bring out through the story. So, for instance, towards the end of the story, oppressive heat weighed on the country, and suddenly, amid the silence, a cry broke out: "The French, the French!" And the poor mill. Now look at how the poor mill is attacked. Balls pierced it in every part. Half of the roof was carried away. Two walls were battered down. But it was on the side of the Morel that the destruction was most lamentable. So the mill, of course, is gradually rebuilt, and Père Merlier finally has a new wheel there to bestow whatever tenderness, as the story says, was not engrossed by his daughter and her husband. So this tells us how this mill, which is the most important character in in this particular story, stands for love, for humanity, for integrity, and these individuals who are of a certain kind in a given situation are pushed to actually display a courage that humanity is capable of. And we might look at them in terms of stereotypes, but under these circumstances, they have in them the potential to show that they are capable of, acting fast and taking a decision and displaying courage. So this is what I would say, about the story. And it's interesting to analyze these two different translations. One, The Miller's Daughter, where the daughter is the protagonist, and the other is The Attack on the Mill, where, the title itself carries the mill. So, and here I think in The Miller's Daughter also, the if you were to look at the courage that she displays, I think it's commendable to, show women as heroes in the
And
19th
this is
century.
far ahead of the short story as it developed in the other European countries, including England.
Yes,
This is a story which is totally intellectual in
yes,
nature.
yes.
It presents a point of view, it presents the counterpoint, it lets the two points clash with each other, and finally the answer is found either in the mill or in the man and the woman. It's not found in any transcendence, in any kind of
No,
poetry anywhere else.
no.
The poetry belongs to the heart of the two people.
Yes, absolutely. There is no transcendence whatsoever. And if one may actually link it to late 19th century women writers, like the American women writers, for instance, or other women writers that we have discussed as part of this series, I think Zola is ahead of his time in that sense, because this connection between humanity and the surroundings, I think that is something that provides a very good point of entry to the women characters in later short stories, where I think their sensitivity and their sensibility is expressed through this.
Mhm.
So,
So, what would be the theme of the story then? If you could, for instance, I have in mind two or three things. One is that it's a story about a woman who comes out of the ordinary moral or ethical concepts and works for the man and tries to save him as much as possible. On the other hand, you have the father who would be rather conservative in his approach, and then his life also is put at stake. And the third thing is Dominic, who's caught as well as who is the active person. So these three things connect in such a manner that Zola, just as you use the word objective, gets out of the triangle and makes his own point, and that point is open-ended. It can go either way. But if he were to, determine their fate, then one says that perhaps the answer lies in the woman recognizing the worth of the man and the man recognizing the worth of the woman and forgetting about their nationalistic background. So that's how I consider this to be the case, and this is what I have learned from your analysis of it,
In
that it's an essay.
in
It,
in fact, if I may just add to what you're saying, I think it's what Zola has done here is that he's used this story to totally overturn patriarchy, where the father and the husband to be are both supposed to defend the woman. It is in turn the woman who has defended them both. She has first helped Dominic escape, and then she stands for the father and tries to protect him. It is she who buys extra time from the Prussians. She gets these 2 hours in which she goes around looking for Dominic. So she buys time, by which time the French actually manage to reach the mill.
and she's the future woman.
She's the future woman.
She's not steeped into the past or even into the limited present.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the victory here is not just of the French, as you rightly said, but the victory here is of the women themselves, and in this kind of a situation, how they can display such heroism, so to say.
So friends, so far as the story is concerned, according to Dr. Payal Nagpal, there is a story inside the story and there is a story outside the story. The inside story is about these three characters, the father, the son-in-law of the father, and the woman, and they have their own story. But outside them, outside the mill where they operate, is the environment, heredity and environment, and that environment seems to be set against the freedom that is sought by these three characters in their own specific ways. So I would say from my side, friends, that the story is intellectual in nature. It's a kind of an essay, and it's an essay that takes help from the characteristics of the different characters, and that resolution is sought and attained. At the same time, it is also kept open-ended. I hope you have liked the lecture by Professor Payal Nagpal. She presented a very complex picture of the story, and naturally, in the complexity is the worth of Émile Zola. Thank you.